I don't think there's one magical answer. If there was, I think they would have tried it.
They kind of just knew they had gambling, they knew they had people coming in, they weren't spending a lot of money back in the city.
The town never really was serious about rebuilding the entire town.
You know, Atlantic City is very resilient. It has its ups and downs, but it always seems to come back through.
The experiment of casino gambling wasn't really maximized the way a lot of people hoped that it would be. So now Atlantic City has to, reinvent itself again. And I think they have to look to the past in order to do that.
Atlantic City was founded based on tourists, and the city's always catered to tourists. Back in 1854, the city was incorporated based on the suggestions of a railroad guy and a doctor. And the Dr. Pitney thought that Atlantic City would be a good place for the folks from Philadelphia to come and breathe in some salt air and rest up and relax from the smoggy Philadelphia air. And so we got the railroads involved to build a railroad to bring them from Philadelphia to Atlantic City. The boardwalk is really kind of the main street of Atlantic City. It was the original street, and it is a main street. It started off as boards that were just laid on the sand, and they would take them up at the end of the season. They were put there by the hotelmen to keep the sand from getting into the hotel lobbies. And so from there it evolved into the permanent street that we see today. It is a street. And it's really an interesting street. You know, it's the home of the casinos now. It was the home of the big old hotels back then, the piers, and it's really kind of the main stretch for Atlantic City.
Local business people quickly saw the opportunities to make it something more than that. So businesses started popping up along the boardwalk, and the boardwalk by the turn of the century is what I've referred to in my book as Main Street in Fantasyland, USA, because it had everything you could think of.
What made us different is because a lot of other shore towns didn't have the boardwalk.
Atlantic City ignored Prohibition for the most part. They decided that the tourists' needs, the visitors' needs were more important. They ignored the edict, and so you could still buy alcohol here in Atlantic City. You could still go to clubs and things and order a drink.
What you have to remember is Prohibition did not pop out of the ground like a mushroom. So what you had that preceded the Prohibition era was bishops' laws, which said no booze on Sunday. And Atlantic City's response to that was, what do you mean no booze on Sunday? That's our busiest day of the week. So when Prohibition came, you had a community that was breaking the law one day a week faithfully for years. Intellectually, morally, ethically, legally, it ain't a big deal to go from doing something illegal one day a week to doing it illegal 7 days a week. And that's what Atlantic City did, and everybody was happy with it. Prohibition did not happen in Atlantic City, and Prohibition, those 14 years were the zenith of Atlantic City's whole experience. For about a 50-year period, Atlantic City really had the Philadelphia region as a captive audience because people weren't driving cars, and so you got on a train and bam, you're in Atlantic City in less than an hour. Once the automobile and once air traffic made it possible for people to pretty much go for a vacation wherever they wanted, Atlantic City found out it had competition.
In about the 1950s or so, Atlantic City started to see a slump in its visitation. More people were going south to Florida because airline travel was much more popular, and air conditioning, home air conditioning and swimming pools meant that people didn't need to go to the ocean to cool off. And so Atlantic City really started to see a bit of a decline in the early 1950s from that.
They dealt with the competition pretty well until the 60s and the 70s, and then it just became too much. Not only the competition, but also what's happened all across America. Atlantic City, in a lot of ways, is a microcosm of what happened across America in terms of the hollowing out of a city by people deciding they want to live someplace else. People vote with their feet. And a lot of people left Atlantic City the same way people left Camden, they left Trenton, they left Patterson.
The introduction of casino gambling came in the 1970s, and Atlantic City has kind of had its ups and downs over the years. And after the slump in the 1950s, casino gambling was seen as a way to bring people back to the city. And so the proposal was put forth to introduce casino gambling here. The voters of New Jersey voted to have it here in Atlantic City. and it really brought in a whole new industry to Atlantic City and to New Jersey. It was the first casinos east of the Mississippi at the time, and it was really something new.
I know what Atlantic City was like in 1976 when the gambling referendum was approved. The baseline of the town is better now than it was then, much better. Because you can't imagine how bad Atlantic City was back in the 70s. It was really a place ready to shut out the lights. So casino gambling saved it.
I think it was a great thing. I mean, we've had this business for going on 81 years, and it was slow for a while. And once the casinos came, business picked up. We started expanding, and we expanded a lot. And, you know, now we're well established. Even though the casinos are a little slow, we're still doing good.
It's a very positive thing. It wasn't used as effectively as it could have been. In 1978, when Resorts International opened, there was one casino east of the Mississippi.
More states in the area have opened up their estates for gambling and for casinos, and so you know, with the added competition, some of the casinos in the city have had to close.
When New Jersey first legalized casino gambling in the 1970s, we were only the second place in the United States to have casino gambling, and now we're the only one on the East Coast. And now there have been so many that have proliferated in Pennsylvania, Delaware. They're coming to New York State, that people don't have to go as far as Atlantic City to gamble.
Instead of really taking advantage of the position that they had for about 30 years, I would say close to 25 or 27, but close to 30 years of no competition, you know, east of the Mississippi, they squandered it. And they squandered one opportunity after another.
For too long, the casinos in Atlantic City were satisfied with day trippers, people who just came to play the slots for an afternoon, came by bus, came by car, and then went home the same day. And if people can do that closer to home, they're not going to travel a great distance to do that.
There used to be hundreds of buses coming in the city every day, and then, you know, why come in now? They're in Philly. Might as well just stay up there, avoid the bus ride.
Gambling has become so normal because there's casinos everywhere. You can't, you know, drive 100 miles without seeing a casino on the East Coast. So as casinos become more normalized, it ceases to be something you want to go on vacation to do. It's not special.
The casinos have really been up and down over the years also. You know, it's a one industry town, and so it's an interesting dynamic.
When the casinos were coming to Atlantic City, property taxes were supposed to be practically zero for people that lived here. They've skyrocketed. They're ridiculous. Mine are ridiculous. My mother still lives in the city. Hers are ridiculous.
Back in the early 80s, Atlantic City could have positioned itself in such a way that the major players wouldn't want to compete against themselves. The major players in the casino industry wouldn't want to compete against themselves. But Atlantic City didn't.
The boardwalk isn't as nice as it used to be. The beaches aren't as nice as they used to be. I mean, you know, we still have the boardwalk and the beach, but if everybody else has got casino gambling, I mean, you know, if they want to gamble, they're not going to come just for the boardwalk and beach.
Politics in City Hall was pretty much about, you know, how do I feather my nest? How do I look after the people that supported me? And so the vision, there was no vision. What's the phrase? When there is no vision, the people perish. Well, there is no vision in Atlantic City's government. Hasn't been for a long time.
Atlantic City, I think, was a little behind on things. They should have been fixing the city up from day one of the casinos, where I felt that, you know, they kind of just knew they had gambling. They knew they had people coming in. They weren't spending a lot of money back in the city. And now they're trying. I mean, the outlets and everything else they're building, they're beautiful, but I mean, now everybody else has gambling.
At the height, we had 13 casinos, and now we have 8. In the last couple of years, they've hit on some hard times.
Believe me, everybody has their own agenda. And so is there vision for the city? No. The present mayor is a very capable guy, but I think he's been handed, you know, a mess, and how much he can do with the situation, I think, is, you know, pretty limited.
Hurricane Sandy affected the city. The eye of the storm hit a little north of here in Brigantine, and so we were spared a lot of the property damage here, but it really affected the morale of the city.
We had 3 foot of water downstairs in the bar. My basements were flooded. I lost all my heaters, my electrical panel. We were underwater. But, you know, that's what you had insurance for. And we got it all back up and running. Other places in the city didn't get affected. The north end did get affected, but there were certain areas that got nothing. Brigantine and all that kind of stuff got affected. I mean, we actually are in a high spot where we're sitting, but, you know, we still got a lot of water.
Hurricane Sandy hit Atlantic City pretty hard. Some places further north in New Jersey got hit even harder. But it was really kind of the third blow of a number of different blows. We had this long-term trend of market saturation, more casinos opening in other places. We had the Great Recession that meant that consumers who saw the declining values of their homes, who lost their jobs, were less likely to want to go out and gamble for fun. And then the third blow was Sandy, which really hurt a number of people in the local economy.
People had their homes flood. A lot of people had, you know, they lost personal items and things. Not as many properties were demolished as a result of Hurricane Sandy as in other areas, but it really affected the morale of the city.
I don't think there is a quick fix. But right now we're just looking for survival in terms of the city. I do have a lot of concerns about the state takeover of the city. I'm not convinced that the state knows how to manage the city any better than the local, the democratically elected, small d Democrat, as in democracy, elected political leaders.
I think state government having a bigger hand can only do good things. It can't do bad things.
Governor Christie had taken over the tourism district of Atlantic City, and now they're trying to step that up. I'm a big believer in democracy, that people have a right to elect their political leaders, and that I think that it is unfortunate if we give the administration of the city over to a bunch of bureaucrats. I think we have a cautionary tale in Flint, Michigan. Hasn't worked out so well, and I'd hate to see that kind of thing happen here.
My fear is that if the right steps aren't taken now, deterioration will continue.
We can't just depend on one industry for the city. There needs to be diversification. There's been lots of proposals about making it more family friendly, bringing in water parks, surf pools, and all kinds of things that they've been recommended. It'll be interesting to see if if they come to be and if families are willing to come here. Maybe there's other directions to be explored also.
I would like to see us emphasize some of the interesting things that Atlantic City has. Not only the beach and the boardwalk, but some of the local history and culture. We have museums. We have a vibrant arts community. Some of those things I think could attract people who are not interested in gambling, and that might include families. But I also think that we have to think beyond leisure and hospitality. I'm hopeful. I think a lot of cities go through cycles. Pittsburgh, for example, had a devastated economy and turned it around. I'm hoping Atlantic City will do that too.
It's going to take major changes to correct the problem that the city has.